Will Igor Shesterkin be a Ranger for life? Will he sign a contract extension before this next season begins? Don't be so sure.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1133 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. So I want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So that intro there, it wasn't done to make everybody nervous or sweat it out as it pertains to Igor Shesterkin and his long-term future with this team, because do I believe that Igor Shesterkin will be a Ranger past this upcoming season? Yes, I do. However, I think the prevailing thought coming into this offseason was that Igor and the Rangers would nail out some kind of a long-term extension between the two parties. You know, get the name on the paper, get the name on the contract, get the ink dry, and let's go forward with Igor Shesterkin as the unquestioned backbone of New York Ranger hockey. But recently, and maybe part of it is just the fact that we haven't heard anything as far as talks between Igor and the Rangers are concerned. We haven't heard anything in quite some time. So that being the case, I'm starting to think that this contract extension, while I still believe it eventually will happen, I'm not so sure it's going to happen as early as we all anticipated, and in most cases, as early as we all would have liked. And I'm going to explain why I think that's the case. First, what we're going to do is take a look at everything from Igor Shesterkin's perspective. Then we'll take a look at everything from the Rangers' perspective. And then at the end of today's episode, I'm going to explain why I think, given Igor's contract situation, why the Rangers should have been more aggressive this offseason and really gone all in for this upcoming season of Ranger hockey. It's all going to tie into Igor's contract. I'll explain how in due time. But for starters here, let's go ahead and take a look at, this entire situation from the perspective of Igor Shesterkin and his camp, and what I think is arguably the biggest reason why I don't think an extension is going to happen this offseason is because really, Igor has no real reason to do it. He has no real incentive to do it, to sign a long-term extension now, 1 year before he is set to become an unrestricted free agent. And of course, when that happens, if you make it all the way to free agency, now you can negotiate with all 32 teams instead of just one team. He's 1 year away from doing exactly that. And some people might hear that and think back to, well, Igor, he signed a contract extension kind of early in the game. The last time around, of course, Igor, 3 years back, signed a 4-year extension with the Rangers. He's now going into the 4th and final year of said contract. When he did that at the time, no goalie in NHL history had ever signed that big of a contract after having played as few games as Igor Shesterkin had. And I think, as a quick aside here, the Ranger front office, they deserve more credit than they typically get for that move. They took a leap of faith, and obviously it worked out. Igor Shesterkin is paid back that investment in a major way over these last 3 seasons. Of course, him just making $5.67 million per season, not even a top 10 paid goalie in the league, an absolute steal for the New York Rangers. But as far as why Igor won't sign an extension now the way he did last time, kind of early in the game, he's no longer in a position where he has any need to play it safe. He was in a much different position 3 years ago. At the time, he's 25 years old and he's being paid 6 figures a year. I mean, high 6 figures, and obviously it's nice. He's a pro athlete now and he's living out his dream and everything. But he goes from making, whatever it was, like $925K a year, I think it was, on his ELC. He goes from that to this contract extension, a 4-year deal where he's going to make $5.67 million per season. And that's going to add up over those 4 years to more than $22 million. When you're 25 years old and you're making in the high 6 figures and somebody offers you this contract extension, all you have to do is sign this paper and you've got $22 million plus coming your way. I think a lot of pro athletes are probably going to do that and play things a little bit safely. And in the case of Igor, he knows that he's still going to be in his late 20s once this contract runs out. And hey, I'll be in position then probably to secure another big payday for myself. And, again, it's different now because this contract that's expiring, He'll have $22 million in his bank account, more than $22 million that he's made over the last 4 seasons. He no longer has any need to play it safe or kind of get ahead of the game or sign this contract because I'm worried that I might not get paid somewhere down the road. No, Igor's put, 5 really good seasons of hockey together on tape. He's going to get paid no matter what happens this upcoming season. He's got no reason to sign a deal now from a financial perspective, because if he does that, then again, he's limiting his options. He can only talk to the Rangers. He can't talk to the other 31 teams, and he's already gotten paid, and now he's looking to cash in big, and I have no issues with him wanting to do that. He wants to be the highest paid goalie in the league. He's made no secret about that. His camp has made no secret about that. So I fully expect the Rangers to go forward with that goal, or rather Igor and his camp to go forward with that goal as it pertains to, what the next contract looks like from the New York Rangers. The only real incentive for Igor Shesterkin to sign a deal right now, I suppose, would just be for peace of mind. It depends. How happy is he in New York? How much does he like his teammates? How much does he like the fans? How much does he like always kind of being in the limelight and being under the magnifying glass? Obviously, it looks like he handles it pretty well, right? This guy has put up phenomenal season after phenomenal season. He's at his best when it comes to the Stanley Cup playoffs. He's been phenomenal every time the Rangers have made it to the playoffs. Maybe, family comes into the picture here. We saw that with Jacob Trouba and him not wanting to uproot his family. And certainly, Igor, I know he's got, one young child, probably doesn't want to uproot his entire family and move. That's at least possible. So if all those things add together and Igor would rather just have the peace of mind and know that he's going to be a Ranger for a very long time, that's when you could see a deal getting done between the Rangers and Igor Shesterkin. But I get the feeling that Igor's content to play out this next year, the last year of his contract, and just kind of see where things land and do everything he can to get, an even better offer from the Rangers than what they're probably currently offering him right now. We don't know how far along talks are or anything like that, but you got to figure the longer Igor, waits this out, the better of an offer, whether it's the Rangers or anybody else, the better of a contract offer that he's ultimately going to receive. The other couple of reasons why, if you're Igor, maybe it would make some sense to sign now, although I don't know that he really has anything to worry about as it pertains to these two areas. If you sign the contract now, then you are protected against having a down season, and you are also protected against having a season where you suffer an injury. And we'll start with the down season concept. So if Igor decides to not play it safe, decides to let it ride, play out this final year of his contract, and then he ends up having a down season, in theory, this could hurt him as he becomes an unrestricted free agent next offseason. But I really don't think that it will, because again, he will be in a situation where he can talk to all 32 teams in the league. Now, of course, not all 32 teams are going to be able to sign Igor, are going to be looking to sign Igor, but he'll certainly have no shortage of suitors out there. And even if he does have a down season, at that point, he's in a situation where he's played now parts of 6 NHL seasons, and they've all been anywhere, at least so far, the first 5, anywhere from very, very, very good to otherworldly. And that's a lot of resume padding that Igor has. So even if he has an upcoming season, this following season, something of a down season by his own lofty standards, I really don't see a situation where it's going to hurt him in the wallet, especially when you consider the fact that, again, if he makes it to unrestricted free agency, there will be something of a bidding war for his services. And as far as like the injury possibility, look, an injury can happen to any player on any given season. And, if a player gets hurt the year before they become an unrestricted free agent, then that's obviously unfortunate for them. And they might not be able to get as big of a deal as they'd otherwise be able to get. But injuries really haven't been a problem for Igor. He'll miss a couple of games here and there every once in a while. It does happen with goalies. We're not even going to count that fluky thing that happened all those years back where him and Pavel Buchnevich got into a car accident. That had nothing to do with hockey. So, again, even if Igor does get injured this upcoming season, and knock on wood that doesn't happen because we need Igor Shesterkin in there, but even if that were to happen, I just don't see a situation where that's going to scare teams away and, oh my God, and Igor's going to cost himself all this money. I just don't see that being the case. Again, especially once you can get a bidding war going, which Igor and his camp will be able to do if he makes it all the way to unrestricted free agency. And on top of everything that I just mentioned, one of the biggest reasons why Igor might not sign right now, contract extension with the Rangers, if he is fast approaching free agency. If this next season comes and goes and he goes through the entire season and doesn't sign an extension with the Rangers, then that's going to put more pressure on the New York Rangers. They're going to have to probably up their offer at that point in the game. If we start getting to the point where, oh man, he's only like a couple of months away, a couple of weeks away from free agency, then that's going to, put some heat on the Rangers to get a deal done with their franchise goalies. So that's everything from Igor's perspective. In just a second, we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit and take a look at everything from the Rangers' perspective and ultimately why I no longer believe that a contract extension is going to happen for Igor Shesterkin this offseason. Now, I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope that, the way things go when it comes to timing with this podcast, what'll probably happen is I'll post this episode, and while it's premiering on YouTube, that's when we'll get the big announcement that the Rangers and Igor Shesterkin have come to a contract extension. Nothing would make me happier. Obviously, you can't give the guy a blank check, but I have no problems with the Rangers, making him the highest paid goalie in the league as he wishes to be. Right now, the highest paid goalie is Carey Price at $10.5 million. So I don't want to see the Rangers go up to like 13 or 14 million. That would be overkill. But again, I do think he deserves to be the highest paid goalie in the league. But we're going to look at everything from the Rangers' perspective, like I said, in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you will be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, let's keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. We also want to mention, we got to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen of the day. And for your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So yeah, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. I want to, now that we've kind of seen things through Igor's eyes, we can shift our attention to the Rangers themselves and why they might not be, trigger happy as it pertains to getting Igor Shesterkin a contract extension this offseason. I still think they should look to do it, and hopefully they are at least exploring the possibility and keeping the dialogue going with Igor Shesterkin and his camp. But we've got Igor's reasons. Let's go to the Rangers' reasons why they may not want to do it. They might want to feel out the market a little bit, and obviously you can't really do that until Igor Shesterkin is an unrestricted free agent. And even as I say this, I don't want Igor Shesterkin to make it to unrestricted free agency, but it's possible we could see some hardball played on both sides of the coin here from Igor's camp and from the Rangers themselves. Maybe the Rangers feel confident that Igor Shesterkin is not really looking to leave New York and is not really looking to leave the New York Rangers. Maybe they feel that as long as they make him a serious offer and as long as they meet his supposed demand, or at least high request, I guess we'll say, of him being the highest paid goalie in hockey, that they feel like they can get a job done with Igor Shesterkin. And all it takes is one team. That's why it's a little bit of a dangerous game for the Rangers to play, to let him get to unrestricted free agency, because all it takes is one team coming out of left field telling Igor Shesterkin, we'll break the bank for you. We're going to give you 13 million, 13 and a half, 14 million a season. I mean, to me, I don't think a team is going to go that high, but it's also one of those things that I suppose you can never completely rule it out either. If there's a team that feels like they're a goalie away from being a bona fide, serious Stanley Cup contender, you never know when they might swoop in with an offer like that. But for some context here, as far as what it costs for goalies, I mentioned this a second ago, but right now the highest paid goalie in the NHL, believe it or not, is still Carey Price. He's at $10.5 million. Rounding out the top five real quick here, you got Bobrovsky at $10 million, Vasilevsky at 9.5, Hellebuck at 8.5, and Sorokin at 8.25. So again, I'm completely fine with the Rangers giving Igor more money per season than any of these guys are making, more than Carey Price is making, but I'm hoping that maybe they can get it done for about $11 million per season. Hopefully that would be enough. I don't know from Igor's camp if that's going to get it done or not. But in that scenario, he does become the highest paid goalie in hockey, which I think is fair given everything that he's put on tape over, really his entire NHL career thus far. Now, it's also worth pointing out, and this is something that we have discussed in a couple of other Igor-centric episodes in the past, but we're going to look at it again right now from the Ranger front office, from their point of view. There are some goalies around the league who will be UFAs next offseason, along with Igor Shesterkin, who are good goalies. Guys that are certainly going to get some good offers for themselves and ultimately sign some really nice contracts. to run through the list right now, to me, the bigger name guys, there's 4 of them total. I would say Linus Ullmark is one of them. You've also got Aiden Hill, you've got Freddie Anderson, and I hesitate to even throw out this name because I just don't see it happening, but I will throw out Alex Georgiev into that as well. Georgiev obviously coming off of a down season. There's other free agent goalies, of course, as well, but these seem to be the 4 most notable, goalies that will be available as UFAs next offseason. And it's going to create a really interesting market for goalies next offseason because this is a good amount of, high name, high profile UFA goalies that are going to be available next offseason. Of course, any of these guys could re-sign with their current team. We shall see there. But do the Rangers, do they look to save some money? Again, it sounds so surreal even suggesting this, but are the Rangers willing to play hardball with Igor Shesterkin and willing to kind of have a little bit of a staring contest with him and not necessarily like a contentious relationship, but again, just a negotiation where each side is playing some hardball. Igor and his camp are holding out for more money. Rangers are kind of looking at them and saying, well, we could go with this goalie or that goalie for a little bit less than you, because that's where the Rangers can kind of turn things around on Igor a little bit. If there's going to be some contract negotiations once free agency begins next year, there could be a situation where the Rangers are offering Igor Shesterkin, let's say 8 years rather, at $11 million per season. Take it or leave it. If Igor hesitates, doesn't sign the deal, well, what if the Rangers were to just swoop in and sign somebody like Aiden Hill, like Linus Ullmark, just like that? If that were to happen, if the Rangers were to do it that way and Igor doesn't sign the contract, just like that, all of a sudden Igor Shesterkin is an ex-New York Ranger, So is Igor and his camp, are they willing to play that kind of hardball with the Rangers? It's going to be very, very interesting. I think we're in for a big-time staring contest between the two sides. Like I said, I think ultimately something will eventually get done. But, from the Rangers' perspective, I'm hoping that they are willing to make Igor Shesterkin the highest paid goalie in the league because I think he deserves it and I think he'll command that much. But from Igor's side, I hope they're willing to be happy with that. The fact that he will be the highest paid goalie in the league, how much more do you need, right? I know that guys want the best deals they can possibly get for themselves, but I don't know. If the Rangers go 8 years at $11 million per season, are they going to hold out for like 8 years at $11.5 million per season? They could, it's up to them. But again, Igor's in a pretty good spot with the New York Rangers right now, and I just don't know that he would want to leave. Another reason that I think could give the Rangers some pause in this whole situation about, really breaking the bank and just giving Igor whatever he wants is the fact that they sort of tried this in the past, and you can't really say that it worked because with Henrik Lundqvist, obviously, they made him a Ranger for life and they gave him this big contract. And, I realize it's a different era, different players, different coaches, different front office members. I get all that. But they went with that strategy. They went with making Henrik Lundqvist the backbone of this team and we'll build around this world-class goalie. And they did that. And they were very competitive for a lot of years there. They made some deep playoff runs. Obviously, they made it to the Stanley Cup final in 2014. But the bottom line, they never won the big one. And obviously, Henrik Lundqvist's contract, I don't fault Lundqvist for this because you want to go out and get the best deal you can get. But Henrik Lundqvist's contract was eating a significant portion of the salary cap, as Igor Shesterkin's next contract will do if he is to re-sign with the Rangers. So maybe the Rangers are just kind of thinking things over as it pertains to going with that strategy, again, as they did in the past. And look, obviously, again, the Rangers in the Lundqvist era, tremendously competitive team, tremendously exciting team, had some chances, just was never quite able to win the big one. And I don't know, maybe the Rangers have some pause about history potentially repeating itself. Another thing that I got to mention here as it pertains to the Rangers and their, sort of their viewpoint on this whole thing here is they have an advantage that they must use. And that is the simple fact, it's a rule around the NHL. When we're talking about UFAs, the current team, and this is true of Igor Shesterkin, it's true of any other UFA from around the league on any team, your current team can sign one of its own free agents to an extension as long as 8 years. You can't go past 8 years. If you're signing a UFA from a different team, though, you're not allowed to go past 7 years. And while at first glance, maybe that doesn't seem like that big of a deal, that's a card that the Rangers need to play, and they need to use it to their advantage. In general here, I think the Rangers need to do something similar, what they did with Vincent Trocheck, where you go with a contract that maybe is a little bit longer than you want, but In so doing, you're able to keep the average annual value for that contract as low as possible. Now, with Igor Shesterkin, it's still going to be 8 figures. I hate to spoil everybody's parade here, but Igor Shesterkin is going to get an 8-figure contract. I think that's pretty much a lock. I mean, barring something completely unforeseen. But let's get back to this 8 years versus 7 years thing here, right? So let's go with the hypothetical that I've been going with. Igor Shesterkin re-signs with the Rangers, 8 years, $11 million per season. That's a total contract of $88 million per year. And for another team to give Igor Shesterkin that much money in his next contract, keep in mind, they can only go to 7 years, right? So they'll have to give him more money per season. In such a scenario, any team signing Igor Shesterkin, if they were going to give him $88 million per season, they can only go 7 years. That's $12.57 million per season. That's a pretty big difference, and that's a huge chunk of the salary cap space for any team around this league. So I think the Rangers really need to play that card and go the full 8 years for Igor Shesterkin. And I realize there's probably going to be some people hearing that and saying like, well, he's going to be old when the contract ends. He will, but that's just the name of the game when you're dealing with a superstar player. You're going to have to end up giving a contract out that's probably for at least a year or two longer than you might have preferred, especially at the kind of money that Igor Shesterkin is going to be making. But I think it's a risk worth taking, and I think that's probably what it's going to take to get Igor Shesterkin to remain with the Rangers. I think also if you're the Rangers, you are probably going to want, and I know some people aren't going to like this either, but you're going to have to do this. You're probably going to want to put into Igor Shesterkin's contract a full no-move clause for maybe the first half of it, and then you have maybe like a partial no-move clause for the second half of it. That's a way, again, to kind of sweeten the deal for somebody like Igor Shesterkin and get him under contract. You're going to have to play ball with this guy because, Igor's going to have a lot of leverage, and he's going to try to use that to get the best contract offer that he possibly can from the New York Rangers. The bottom line here, again, my prediction as of right now, no extension between now and the start of the season. I would love to be wrong about that, but I just don't see the incentive really I see the incentive from the Rangers side. I don't see any incentive at all from Igor Shesterkin's side, though, and I feel like him and his camp might be willing to let this upcoming season play out a little bit and see what kind of an offer you can get from the Rangers or potentially some other team next offseason. I just don't know that an extension is coming, but again, keeping my fingers crossed that I have this prediction wrong. We shall see. So in just a second, we're going to keep everything rolling. Going to slightly shift gears, but it's all going to tie into Igor Shesterkin. I'm going to talk about why the Rangers really should have gone all in this offseason. And some of you might already be connecting the dots a little bit, but I'll explain what I mean by that in further detail in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home those huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Going to be talking about why I think the Rangers kind of misplayed this offseason a little bit and why it ties back to Igor Shesterkin's current contract. Remember, he's in the final year of a 4-year deal that pays him the low price of just $5.67 million, which sounds funny saying it that way, but when you take a look at what he's done for the Rangers and you compare his cap hit to the cap hits of some other goalies around this league, yeah, that is one of the absolute steals of the NHL currently. So, again, I do think the Rangers should have taken better advantage of the fact that Igor Shesterkin is entering the final season where he comes as an absolute steal to this team. There were ways to do it this offseason, and honestly, the way this offseason began, I thought the Rangers, that's exactly what they were going to do. I thought they were going to kind of move on in one way or another from some sizable contracts and some guys that weren't living up to said contracts. And they started doing exactly that at the beginning of this offseason. What they did was they placed Barclay Goodrow. Okay, good one. They placed Barclay Goodrow on waivers with the knowledge that the Sharks were going to claim him and the Rangers could rinse their hands clean of Barclay Goodrow's cap hit, which is, of course, $3.64 million per season. So once they did that, I'm just waiting for the dominoes to fall. I thought Trouba was going to be next. We had that report that really subpar reporting from Larry Brooks where, I mean, I don't even know what to make of it at this point. It was such a vague story. He claimed that the Rangers had decided to move on from Jacob Trouba and that one way or another they were going to do that. There was the rumor of him being traded to Detroit, but then Trouba was going to put Detroit on his no move clause. And then Brooks seemed to hint at, but not say for sure, that Trouba would refuse to report to a team that traded for him, even if it was a team that was not on Trouba's partial no move clause. So I don't know. I don't really know what to make of that. But one way or another, I began to believe and frankly hoped that Jacob Trouba would be off this team at a certain point, because even if you go down the path that saves you the least amount of money, if you were going to move on from Jacob Trouba, you still end up with an extra $4 million in cap space. That would be a buyout. If you buy him out, an extra $4 million in cap space for Jacob Trouba this offseason. So you do that, and then maybe even Capo Caco, you move on from him as well. Instead, they signed him to a 1-year, $2.4 million contract extension for this upcoming season, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that price. But again, you've got Igor Shesterkin at just a bargain basement rate. If you were to then move on from Barclay Goodrow, that saves you $3.64 million. You move on from Jacob Trouba, even if it's via a buyout, that saves you $4 million. And if you were to trade Capo Caco after you sign him to this 1-year extension, that saves you $2.4 million. That is a savings total of more than $10 million per season for this upcoming year. You could have done a lot more in free agency. There were some good free agents available. We talked about a lot of them on this podcast. Take full advantage of the fact that Igor Shesterkin is still signed to a very team-friendly contract. Move on from these other contracts where guys aren't living up to what they're being paid, and go out and attack this next season. All in this season. Let's bring in some big-time free agents. Let's add to a team in a major way, to a team that was in the Eastern Conference Final, was 2 wins away from making it to the Stanley Cup Final, and a team that had the best record in the NHL. I think the Rangers kind of dropped the ball when it came to that, and for whatever reason, it looked like they were going to go down that road once they waived Barclay Goodrow, and I don't know if they got cold feet or what happened with Jacob Trouba, but one way or another, they did not do it. And some fans were even clamoring, I wouldn't do this, but some fans were clamoring for the Rangers to move on from Ryan Lindgren this offseason. Instead, Lindgren signs a $4.5 million extension. Now, again, I'm completely for Ryan Lindgren being back in the fold, but I certainly respect the viewpoint of other Ranger fans that maybe weren't feeling that. And if you wanted to move on from Lindgren as well, and we add that to our previous total, now you're looking at about $14.5 million of cap space that the Rangers could have used in other ways this offseason. And I'll do you one better. You also, while we're having fun here in fantasy, rebooking the Rangers offseason, essentially, you could have also then not traded for Riley Smith, and that saves you close to $4 million. Now we're up to like $18 million in cap space. I mean, imagine all the different players that the Rangers would have been able to sign this offseason to, again, add on to this team that wasn't far away from at least making it to the Stanley Cup Final, and potentially, I mean, we'll never know what would have happened between them and the Oilers, but I do like that matchup for the Rangers, and I think there's a very good chance they could have beaten the Oilers had they made it that far. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, bottom line, all this is a long way of saying that given that we are in the final season of Igor Shesterkin being one of the biggest contract steals around the entire NHL, I do think it would have made sense for the Rangers to have a very aggressive offseason, really attack 2024, 2025 by shedding some underperforming players, and there would have been avenues to do that, and bring in some guys that really could have helped this team. They still have a great team. I mean, look, I've said this before. Going into this next season, their team is better on paper than it was the season before. And last season, they won the President's Trophy. And again, came close to winning a Stanley Cup. No cigar, unfortunately. But instead, they made the aggressive move of waiving Barclay Goodrow. That was a do-what-you-have-to-do kind of a move. But then they kind of pumped the brakes a little bit. And I don't know. To me, I think you could have taken better advantage of the fact that this is the last year that Igor Shesterkin can be had at a very, very low cost. So just my thoughts on the entire offseason and my thoughts on the entire Igor Shesterkin situation. Again, would love to be wrong about this. Would love to see him sign a contract a little bit later today. Maybe while this episode is premiering on YouTube, we shall see. But at least as of now, that has not happened. And I really have my doubts that it's going to happen before this upcoming season begins. But yeah, figure we can call it there. Did want to mention the fantasy league again. If you played last year, definitely reach out to me, get in touch, save your spot in the league for this upcoming season. And if you didn't play last year, do the same thing. Get in touch with me, email or DM on Twitter, and we will save your spot in the league. And hopefully you can take the position of, anybody that might not be back from last year. But, and the playoff overtime winners. Got to mention that. So if you have a story from this past year's playoff run for the Rangers, they had 4 games that they won in overtime. If you have a fun, interesting, unique, funny, heartwarming story that you'd like to share, definitely send it my way, and we will read those stories on a future episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Definitely looking forward to do that. I think we'll do that maybe right before this upcoming season starts. That'll just be a fun way to get everybody jacked up and ready to go for some Ranger hockey. So definitely looking forward to that. And if you're hearing this, definitely send those stories along my way. And like I said, I will read it in a future episode. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.